What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch with another Spotlight video. And I've been picking up a lot of Blu-rays lately and got a lot of stuff to review. But I'll be getting back into the Laserdisc content shortly, so don't worry about that. And I apologize for the big gap in Laserdisc content. And I know a lot of people are coming at this channel from the Laserdisc angle, so I have not forsaken thee. Don't forget. But anyways, one of the things I had to pick up, I'm very impatient. These films have been released around the holiday season the past few years, just like the predecessors had been released back in the early 2000s every year around the Thanksgiving kind of season. And I am very impatient. I can't wait out till Christmas, so I have to pick them up for myself, much to my wife's chagrin. But this year, I had to get the extended edition of The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. One thing I've appreciated about these series and the Lord of the Rings series, I remember I picked up the theatrical cut of The Fellowship of the Ring on release day. But on digital bits and everywhere else, it had been made known to the fans that an extended edition was coming that November. And likewise, I know if I really want to see the theatrical cuts, I can check them out. I can stream them or whatever like that. But I know I'm just going to wait until November and check it out for real. So I had to grab this right away, opening day or release day, and check it out. I had seen it a couple times in the theater and enjoyed it well enough and thought I'm going to enjoy the extended edition. So one of the questions I had on seeing the extended edition on the horizon was what were they going to add, because the theatrical cut was pretty well packed, and how much more information can you add to the film? And they actually did add some things, and haters be damned, is actually not just complete and total filler. So we'll talk about this on this Blu-ray Spotlight video. So hopefully you guys will be interested in hearing a little bit of Hobbit talk for a few minutes. So, The Battle of the Five Armies was released last year, and it was a film that wasn't supposed to be initially. The Hobbit series was originally going to be helmed by Guillermo del Toro, and because of rights issues with the studio, with MGM, and its belongings being divvied up amongst other studios and everything like that, things got pushed so far back that Guillermo del Toro could no longer helm the series. So enter Peter Jackson, who came back into the fold and took things back over. And it was going to be two films. It was going to be The Unexpected Journey, and then There and Back Again. And along the way, it was kind of brought up that, well, you could use the appendices and kind of mix things up a little bit and push the films a little bit more and make them into three films. So it's generally rewritten now that Peter Jackson is this angry troll-like creature that's like, I'm going to make three movies and I'm going to waste as much time and all this stuff, when it's really not the case. That was asked of him, and I think he was just as skeptical as anybody else as to whether or not they could pull it off. But he and Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens had done some major scripting and put this film together. So anyways, the tone had kind of changed a little bit, and The Battle of the Five Armies is largely about this battle that is relatively given short shrift in the book. Bilbo, the main hobbit, the titular hobbit, is knocked unconscious in the book for a large part of the battle, and you hear about it kind of afterwards. So needless to say, if you're going to do a big, giant, Lord of the Rings-esque motion picture, you're going to have to bring a lot of new material to the table and have all the kind of tactics laid out and all the different sides having lots of inventive skirmishes and, of course, dialogue, etc. So the biggest complaints I heard a lot of people complaining about Smaug, the dragon being carried over from the desolation of Smaug, the last film, and then only being in this film for a short period of time. But again, the filmmakers say that was their idea of kind of making the opening of this film like a James Bond prologue moment, where you kind of get through this big adventure and it's very dangerous and everything, but it's just the teaser kind of before the main story begins. And the story in this film is about the dwarves, the company that the Hobbit has been following along in, the Baker's Dozen, or the Dirty Baker's Dozen, as Jed Brophy likes to call them. These dwarves actually reach their destination, the Erebor Mountain, and they have regained the gold found within, and then it quickly becomes known to them and the rest of the world that, oh, there's a mountain of neat, nifty treasure without a dragon guarding it. So let's all go get a piece. So it becomes a kind of like a tortured psychological profile of Thorin Oakenshield, played by Richard Armitage, the kind of lead of the troop, and apparently going to be king under the mountain, and all of the other peoples of the land nearby that seem to have some sort of claim upon some of the gold. And so Bard, played by Luke Evans, and the men of Lake Town, the men and women and children of Lake Town, all seem to think that they are owed, their due to help them rebuild after Lake Town is damaged heavily. And then Thranduil, played by Lee Pace, and his amazing eyebrows, also rolls in with his Mirkwood elves, and they all seem to want a piece of some ancient jewels that are also owed them. And there's also plenty of orcs that just want to kill everybody and take over the place. And so there's a lot of dramatic, dynamic material there. And needless to say, there's a pretty intensely scripted battle that takes up most of the film, and constant shifting of goals and enemies, etc. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid follow-up to the other two. If you did not enjoy the first film, you're probably not going to enjoy this one. Or if you didn't enjoy the first and Smaug, I'm sure you're probably not going to dig it that much, and you're going to feel that it's got the same amount of filler and CG overload and all that stuff. But I again, watching these films afresh and then in this longer cut, I never get the feeling that these films and Peter Jackson's take on the Middle-earth lore, I don't feel that it's changed. I almost feel that it's entirely the audience that's changed. I think the amount of hokey stuff is equal to the Lord of the Rings series. I believe that the amount of filler and crazy over-the-top CG battle stuff is equal to what was in the Lord of the Rings. I really just feel that the audience is coming at these films differently, and I really don't think there's a fault to the films themselves. If you don't like Peter Jackson's style and how he's adapted these stories, with Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh, then you just don't like them. I mean, really, it's. I don't think these films are worse than Lord of the Rings. So it seems, just strange to hear so much venomous hatred heaped upon them, and really the arguments about how long they are and how short the book is. None of that stuff holds water with me. I mean, there's been plenty of counterpoints made about how long the audiobooks are. Adaptations. People are trying to reinvent The Hobbit not as a pretty dense novel, but they're trying to reinvent it as a 20-page children's picture book, which it is not. It's not only a pretty dense novel, but there's a lot of material in it that's given short shrift by Tolkien. I mean, Professor Tolkien, would be very, very detailed about certain things, but yet entirely vague about other things altogether. So if you're going to make a film out of his stories, you're going to have to add in some details. And I think everybody did a really laudable job at pulling that off. So yeah, again, it's one of those cases with the complaints about the movie. I understand that they are complaints. I just don't happen to see them as faults. Again, like I was saying with my favorite film of the year so far, Mad Max Fury Road, I've understood, I know my mom, for one, hated it. She came at me with her list of complaints about the film. I'm like, I actually thought most of those were strengths of the film. So I do understand that it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but if you think it's too long, you're definitely not going to want to stick around for the extended edition. But if you were like me, are always kind of wanting more of this world and wanted to spend a few more minutes here and there in this world and with these characters, you'll want to check out the extended edition. It's about 2 hours and 44 minutes, so not that much longer than the theatrical cut. So if you're worried about long, boring stretches or like Apocalypse Now redo where they hang out on a plantation for 20 minutes, nothing like that happens here. But there is a major CGI set piece that you may regard as filler with a chariot that's skidding around on the ice, and a lot of intricate scenes with the trolls and orcs around that area. I know Graham McTavish was the actor was very, very disappointed that scene was cut out of the film. And a lot of the problems in this, it wasn't because scenes were necessarily dragging the story down. And that's usually when things are cut out. It's because they're really unnecessary about driving the plot. And that is kind of the case with some of these. But the reason they were cut out was because there was a push to get this film out for last December, and they were really up against the wall. And if you've got a ton of different teams working on individual scenes, you realize that if you cut a couple of those scenes, then you can double up on the workforce on the CGI scenes that are really having a hard time meeting deadline. So that was kind of like the difficult call that Peter Jackson made, and he edited out some of those scenes, like that giant piece with the chariot. And there's also a lot with Dane, played by Billy Connolly, who's just fantastic, and also fantastic in the special features, where he pronounces his disdain for Tolkien because he was a folk music enthusiast back in the day, and you were either a Tolkien folk enthusiast or a non-Tolkien folk enthusiast, and he thought those guys were all off their rockers. So pretty hilarious that he only came at this role because he thought of Dane like a Edinburgh tough, like Begbie from Trainspotting, but in dwarf fashion. So I love that about him. But his character, Dane, when he arrives, he has a lot more to do. In fact, even all the way to the end, Dane's got a lot more to do in the film. And his Iron Hill dwarves are introduced in great fashion. There's a little bit of battle trickery that I don't really want to spoil for you. So that's great. But really, the nicest part about the extended edition is that a lot of the individual dwarves are given character moments within the battle. And again, even Professor Tolkien was guilty of just dumping a ton of names on a page at you. They all rhymed, and that was all very cute and stuff like that. But he wasn't amazingly adept at kind of fleshing out all these characters. And that is one of the things that Peter Jackson is done well in this, is giving all the individual dwarves their own kind of style, their own kind of look, their own feel. And a lot of them have some really cool, interesting moments in the battle, and they take the time to let that happen in this version. So I thought that was great. So this sucker's coming at you in 1080p definition, and there is, of course, a 3D version out there, but I don't have a 3D projector. But it looks fantastic. I think it looks even better than the other ones. The black levels were great. There wasn't any pixelization, I noticed. Again, the way the film is shot, there's a lot of kind of processing to some of the green screen stuff, and there's a kind of a softness that's imbued in the picture. But it's done very creatively, and I'm guessing on purpose, because when you sometimes think that a scene is soft, then you'll realize just how much detail there is in the costumery. Characters' hair, you can see individual hair strands going on. So if you can be tricked into thinking the picture is soft at times, but mostly because of the way the film was shot. Andrew Lesney, the DP, who has since passed on, and there's a nice memoriam on here. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But this does a great job at capturing the detail of the situation. Yeah, I thought it looked fantastic. I mean, again, it's a lot of drab steel and stone kind of color palettes going on, and there's a lot of damaged environs and dingy battlefields, etc. So there's not a lot of brilliant color. So if you're looking for something that's going to really pop in terms of making the most out of the color palette, you're going to want to seek out something else. But I mean, just in terms of detail, this is a really stellar looking disc. As you'd guess, the DTS HD Master Audio 7.1 track is a stunner. I mean, yeah, these films are meticulously engineered in the sound mixing room, and if you've seen some of the special features on, I believe the Desolation of Smaug had a great feature about them being pushed to create the soundtrack for this thing at the last minute, and man, those guys really worked wonders, and it's very, very aggressive. I mean, you got the dragon flying overhead, behind you. There's a lot of just really aggressive surround sound and low rumbles. It'll definitely get some butts twitching if you got a nice subwoofer. And dialogue was always really intelligible. I didn't have any problems with that. And it gives your system a really nice workout, as you'd expect. And the music, of course, comes off Howard Shore's music comes blaring, nice and loud and regal, and yeah, no complaints about the sound at all. Special features, you should know what you're getting into if you've seen the others. I have been hooked on the Appendices forever. And when the Lord of the Rings extended editions came out back in the early 2000s, I mean, it really was part of my holiday season was spending time with the WETA Digital Workshop. Richard Taylor and his crew fashioning orc armor and all that stuff. Andrew Lesnie, Dan Hanna, Andy Serkis, and it's so fantastic that Andy Serkis has come on as an assistant director in these films, so that even though Gollum's not always a part of the story, he's still there. It's just this cast of characters that feel like family now, and it's crazy. So I was really missing that after the Lord of the Rings series ended, and King Kong kind of helped because there was a lot of great production diary material released for that, but it was funny. It was the thing that got me the most excited about the Hobbit film series was an early video diary kind of teaser that had been leaked, and it showed some footage of the cast and crew on the set. And I think they had the Maori, dance and chant inside the filming studio, and that was like, wow, I'm really going. And not only am I going back to Middle Earth, but I'm going back to New Zealand. I'm going back to hang out with this cast of characters that introduced me to it in the first place. So even though they're 9 hours, every time these things come out, the Appendices are on 2 separate Blu-rays, and each one's about 5 hours long. There's the Appendices Part 2, The Gathering Storm, The Chronicles of the Hobbit Part 3, and then finally the Appendices Part 12, Here at Journey's End. And they're structured very well. I know the Lord of the Rings Appendices could get a little labyrinthine and tricky to follow, and they even had a fold-out map to explain where everything was laid out. But in the Hobbit releases, they've been really smart about just having 2 essentially feature-length documentaries, and you can watch all the individual parts, or you can just hit play all and just kick back and let it all happen. So obviously the bulk of the special features are saved for disc 2 and 3, but there are a few things on the primary first disc with the movie itself. There's another one of the running series of almost like travelogue pieces, pimping the benefits and virtues of New Zealand and all of its wonders you can behold as a fan to go check out and see where all the locations of Battle of the Five Armies were actually physically shot. So that's not quite as comprehensive as anything you're going to find on the other disc, but it's pretty informative, quickly, and just fun enough. And then there is a feature-length running commentary featuring Philippa Boyens and Peter Jackson, and there's not a lot of material that's fresh in that if you've already watched the Appendices. They mostly talk about the same things that you saw in all the documentaries, etc. But there are a couple bits here and there, especially when they're talking about the writing and the structure, where it gets a little bit more in-depth than some of the other material. Especially they mention a few cool things about how they were attempting to work Viggo Mortensen's Aragorn into the story, and even Liv Tyler too. They were trying to find a way to shoehorn them into the film, and how it really wasn't working. So that stuff was pretty neat. Otherwise, it's mostly reiterating stuff that you know from the Appendices, or will know if you're watching this before watching the Appendices. But then it's just nice, having Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens to yourself for a couple hours as they're bouncing things back and forth. So it's a little bit more intimate. The only thing I was missing would be a cast and maybe some other crew commentary, because that was one of the neat things about the Lord of the Rings extended editions. It had a lot of cast commentary, and that stuff with Sean Astin and Elijah Wood was really cool and fun, and gave you a little bit of a different perspective than just the filmmaker's vision. But still, good stuff. It went through pretty quickly, not a lot of gaps or anything like that. So the first extended edition Appendices Blu-ray has all of the filming. It's all the production shooting moments, and again, just fantastic work. And if you think these films are cynical, if you think that nobody has heart going into them, if you think it's just a cash grab or something, you really just have to watch these special features and just see how much love, how much passion, how much integrity is put in the creation of these films, and how much of a family affair it is. I mean, there's no room for cynicism at all here. I mean, that should just all be checked at the door. It's just so much fun. It's great seeing how everyone gets along, and so many great moments, like when the Wellington crew first encounters snow for the first time in like 40 years, and they're all just tripped out about a couple, like, maybe an inch or two of sleet, and how all the English cast and crew were like, come on, what's your problem here? Again, it's a lot of great stuff showing Luke Evans trying to get through Bard the Bowman's racing across the rooftops and all that stuff, and a lot of great on-location shots, showing what everybody had to go through to get some of the really kind of high mountainous shots, and just how amazing it was when they got all the locals to be extras at a scene where all the kind of Lake Town refugees were washing ashore early on in the film, and how everybody's got so into it. And it's just, there's so much passion it's just overflowing with everybody, and you get to see how Peter Jackson just keeps powering through this all, even when he hits a wall. And again, that is one of the most cynical pieces I've heard coming out of this, was that when this released, all the news I heard was Peter Jackson admits that he didn't know what he was doing, and he was just wasting time, wasting the audience's time, wasting his time, and just shooting nonsense, and he had no idea what the story was. He had totally let it go. And when you watch the special features, you learn the truth, which is far more human and far less just snarky and douchey as what the news crews had and the journalists had posited. It's just that Peter Jackson had come onto this project after there'd been tons of pre-production work put together by Guillermo del Toro, and obviously they were going to go mat the film in two different ways. So in order to not just keep the project stalling, Peter Jackson had to come in hard. He had to come in running and grab the baton from Guillermo del Toro, redesign the picture, and just hit the ground running and start shooting. And he was miraculously able to keep that up. And if you ever doubt the man's work ethic, just watch some of the previous special features where he's pretty much overseeing all sorts of post-production duties and sound mixing, editing, and all that stuff all at the same time. And everyone they interview will let you know that, yes, he will give whatever attention you need to get your job done. So the guy rarely sleeps. So powering through all this, eventually it was going to hit a kind of saturation point where he needed time to do something. And that's what happened with this film, is that it's the Battle of the Five Armies. And if you're going to have a battle, it's got to be very intricate, tactical, and really thought out. One of the funniest pieces here is that you learn that Peter Jackson is really like a genius at playing Risk, and how nobody ever wants to play Risk with him. And it was coming to the point where he was filming the Hobbit saga and was just running out of time to prep for the battle and figure it all out. And he just called it and said, all right, we're just gonna, he shot a bunch of material, and again thought, I need time to really work this out. So we'll just, shut up production for the year. We're going to really focus on this other stuff, and then we're going to come back next year and do the battle stuff. And that's it. They wrapped up, everybody went home, and then they came back next year and they finished everything up. And then he had plenty of time to do his prep work. There was no extended periods where he's just running around shooting things. They really tried to paint it like this was some folly. And it wasn't. It was really well thought out. Everybody did their jobs, and everybody knew what they were doing. They just needed a little bit of time in the meantime to know what they were doing. So it's really like trying to make fun of somebody for stumbling in an alleyway in the dark when they don't know where they are and there's boxes in their way. You got to just take time, grab a flashlight, see what's going on, get the boxes out of your way, and walk down the alleyway. But apparently you're supposed to be shamed for doing that. So, again, there was no actual drama there. Moving on to the final disc, that's all the post-production stuff. And the only thing I was disappointed in is that there wasn't as much music stuff. So you didn't get to see Billy Boyd doing the final song and all that stuff. And there wasn't as much post-production sound mixing and all that stuff. Though they did mention they were up against the wall again, much like they were with Desolation of Smaug. But they covered all that in the previous releases. So this is largely about the battle and all the elements of it. There's a bunch of large sections on Tauriel and Dane and Thranduil, and there's large sections about Erebor and all the different locations of the area. So that's all laid out for you in intense detail. And it also does explain how they had to cut some shots and how they were able to put them back in the extended edition, and how everybody's really happy about that. But there's so many fun moments too in the making of the film, where they came up with this Wheel of Fortune kind of idea where they were just giving away prizes on the set, and you just wouldn't believe like the amount of love these guys have for what they do. And I know it's really intense and all that stuff. And in fact, there's a lot of jokes on the set when they're like, oh no, now we're gonna have to do the Avatar movies next after this, and we're killing ourselves, and it's just gonna keep going. But still, everybody just keeps trucking, and the post-production stuff was as intense as anything else. But they give you a lot of fascinating insight as to how things were put together, both on practical, sets. The sets for Dale were fantastic and really rich, and people looked at it like it was a real Italian kind of getaway spot. And then also the CG work, and shows how a lot of people got involved in CG and other work. It was great. Lee Pace, when he wasn't doing his acting as Thranduil, he would just show up and make weaponry with Richard Taylor. It's that infectious watching this stuff that you want to be part of it. And it's infectious for me. That was the one problem I always had with these things, is you kind of come off them like a drug. You have kind of withdrawals when you're done with them, because you realize, oh, I'm not part of WETA. I'm not part of this filmmaking team, and you really feel like you've gone through it. You've gone there and back again. So yeah, the toughest part to sit through was the Farewell My Friends, finale that not only wraps up the production. It's bad enough you had to see all the actors say goodbye to one another at the end of the first Appendices disc, which is pretty tough. And even the most stoic of actors ended up kind of blubbering a little bit. And it's just so great how they all get these amazing gifts that relate to their characters on parting. And there's a whole wrap up to not only this film, The Battle of the Five Armies, but the Hobbit saga and the entire Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, Middle Earth super saga. So there's a lot of flashbacks to when filming started back in the late 90s, and it's just really it pulls at the heartstrings if you're a lover of these films, and really intense. And there was some good quick extra features. There's a really nice memorial tribute to Andrew Lesnie, the director of cinematography, who it's interesting. He's being eulogized within this by the late Christopher Lee, who was still alive at the time of producing these special features. And again, Christopher Lee is amazing, seeing his behind-the-scenes pieces in here. Cate Blanchett, again, completely delightful. But anyways, there's also a quick fake inside edition kind of piece about how Adam Brown is this complete egocentric madman. And there's also a quick piece that they had put together to tie in with Ain't It Cool News, who were doing a Butt-Numathon in Austin, Texas, and Peter Jackson and crew let them come on and interview everybody. So it's some silly fun. But then there's also a rap video from Jed Brophy, who decided to make this video for his rap song Rivers of Gold. And if you think rap song, don't think rap song. It's really like if some jam band decided they were going to do a rap, because it's pretty tuneless. And I mean, the rhymes are pretty good, but they're not really enunciated very well. And it's pretty silly stuff, but it's cute. It's fun enough anyways. But yeah, that's a nice thing. These appendices are fun. And one of the great things, too, is they give a lot of love to John Howe and Alan Lee and their work on the entire series and how they worked together. And that was really interesting stuff about how, John Howe had written fan letters to Alan Lee as a kid or as a young man, and how he never expected to be working side by side with this guy for multiple films, and how those guys got drafted into working in CG as well. And that was another one of those great moments where everybody who is involved in this film is really willing to pitch into a different section of the production in which they're not normally used to. So it's great. It's really a family affair. Everybody is just doing it as a labor of love, which is great. It really carries through, and I think it infuses the film with a legitimate passion. And a lot of people will disagree vehemently, but again, to each their own. I'm a big fan of the Hobbit series, and I think it's really in line with what was accomplished in The Lord of the Rings, and I enjoyed the extended edition quite a lot. So If you guys are inclined to check out such things, do so. I think you'll dig it. All right. Thanks for hanging out and taking this trip back to Middle Earth with me, at least in vicarious kind of traveling fashion. And we'll be back here with some more videos very soon. Cheers.